Welcome to another episode of Reborn. Today we have a distinguished guest with us, Lonnie L.D. Powell, who is running for U.S. Congress in Indiana's 5th District in 2024. Lonnie, thank you so much for being here. Please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to be in the world of politics.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for hosting me today and this opportunity to talk a little bit about my background and why I'm running. My desire to jump in this race has several factors in it. One, I have an ethic of service. I joined the Navy when I was 17, volunteered, and signed on the dotted line to go defend my country. Served on an aircraft carrier for 4 years, the USS Constellation. I think now it's probably razor blades, been cut up and decommissioned. And I came out of the Navy, went to college, got a degree in business, and met my future wife when I came out of college at the first job I had, which was in banking. Got married, and while I was in college, I interned for Congressman Dan Coates, who's kind of a model for me in politics. Just a very ethical man, Christian, and I got to watch and observe him in the political arena for several years. And a dream was kind of born back then that if someday I had a chance to run for Congress, I would. But it's not the easiest thing to run for office, and many times timing and a lot of other factors can come into play, and it just didn't quite come together for me. I got married, went on, had a wife, 3 kids. And so the dream of running for Congress kind of went to the wayside. Then about 20 years ago, I woke up one morning, terrible pain in my chest, not a heart attack, taken to the hospital. Turns out I had pancreatitis. And so I was put on morphine. I got pneumonia, spent 10 days in the hospital on painkillers, got the pancreatitis cleared up, the pneumonia cleared up, came out of the hospital, those issues solved, but another one started, an addiction to powerful painkillers. And I was old school thinking as a Christian. I just thought, oh, you're a good guy, you can just stop this, just stop. Right. And I tried to stop on my own, wasn't able to. And I stayed stuck in that situation longer than I had to, and it took me further down the road, than I probably had to. But eventually someone introduced me to a place called Fairbanks Hospital here in Indianapolis, which is a recovery hospital. And I had enough pain and enough, I was fed up, sick and tired, being sick and tired, as we like to say, and I eventually checked into Fairbanks Hospital. In Fairbanks, I learned about the disease of addiction, alcoholism, and I met people from all walks of life. I met CEOs from billion-dollar companies, grandmothers, uncles, teenagers, people from every economic area.
Right.
And so my eyes were opened and also we were educated by Dr. Kelly at the time about the disease of alcoholism and addiction, and how an addict's brain is different than someone who's not affected by this disease. If you think of it kind of like an allergy. If you had an allergy to strawberries, you wouldn't eat strawberries because it creates a problem with you. Certain drugs cause a problem with me. So I learned about the disease of addiction, got the help, came out of Fairbanks, eventually moved to Fort Wayne, where I helped start one of the largest recovery ministries in Northeast Indiana called Celebrate Recovery at the Chapel. So for the last 18 years, I've been living in that world, helping others get free from addictions, hurts, habits, hang-ups, using the principles of the 12-step and a Christ-centered recovery program. So now we're up to 2023. This seat here opens up. The current congresswoman had announced she was not running for re-election. And I was kind of caught my attention, and that dream that I had years ago of running for Congress all of a sudden kind of popped up again into me, and so I kind of tried to ignore it. I thought, that's
Right.
that's a tough road to hoe to go run for office. But the more I ignored it, the louder that little inner voice got.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, I'm going to explore with some friends. I talked to my pastor, I talked to some friends, I talked to family, and I talked to my employer at the time. Everything was green lights. Go ahead, go for it. So in October of 2023, I decided to throw my hat in the ring and run for office. And the passion for me, the premier issue for me, is securing our borders. After 18 years sitting in the rooms of recovery and watching the damage happen to our people, it's clear as a bell to me that we need to stop the bad stuff, the bad poison coming into our country that's hurting our people. On the other side of that coin now, I think our government can do better in making amends to the people that have been hurt, and we can use the power of our federal government not only to stop the bad, but to initiate some good programs to help people recover, get better, get back into the mainstream as healthy, contributing citizens again. So that's kind of the trajectory of my life and my story, and how I kind of wound up being here running for office today.
Well, thank you for sharing. It sounds like in the beginning of your career and your life, you kind of lived the traditional American dream.
Yes.
Would you say? And after that, you hit some road bumps with the pain meds. What do you think that showed you ultimately? And do you think that shifted the course of your life? Where would you be today if you had not been to Fairbanks in that recovery program?
Yeah, one of the biggest lessons it taught me was humility. I was, again, I think of that harder mindset that people who are, a homeless person or a person who's got an issue with drugs or alcohol, it's just morally bad.
Yeah.
I don't believe that anymore from my own experience and from the people I've met. Some of the drugs that are coming out today are super addictive.
Yeah.
And once they grab a person, sometimes they need help. And once they get help, they get better.
Yeah.
And that's my experience. I got help. I got better. I've been a contributing member of society again for the last 20 years. And so there's hope for people. We don't have to just let them flounder on their own. So that's been one of the big issues, is humility. I need help. Asking for help is a good thing, and so that, I guess that's one of the key lessons.
I'm curious, your inability to give up the drugs at that time, did that shift your perspective on God, given that you had the traditional perspective that, like, hey, I'm a man of God, I can give this up, it's not something really that, people like me have problems with. Your inability to give it up on your own and having to go to Fairbanks, did that shift your perspective on God at all?
I think initially there was some confusion because, I just tried prayer, just thinking that prayer alone would do it. Why can't just prayer handle this? Why do I have to talk about this? Why do I have to ask for help? This is shameful.
Yeah.
This is, and so I think that the shift in my change of my view of God expanded in the fact that my eye was open to a lot of good people who were out there willing to help. And that help is good, and accepting help and not trying to do life on my own. When I get stuck now, I reach out and ask for help very quickly. So in a way, it helped develop my character and my ability now to remain humble, kind of keep that beginner's mind. And when I get stuck, ask for help immediately. And there's good people out there that want to help.
I'm a believer that everything happens for a reason. If you could go back 20 years or 15 years and change that, would you?
Good question. I wish I could have learned what I learned differently, but I think it took what it took. And in a way, my kids actually got a better father today than they had before recovery. Not only did I learn how to, stop using the drugs, but I also learned a new way to live.
Yeah.
And I gained a whole new set of friends, and my faith even grew deeper as I walked that recovery journey. So I'm going to say no because of how I am today and the growth in my character and me as a person happened. And that's because I made some choices to embrace the program and do the work.
Yeah. So over these first few minutes, it's become clear to me that you're a man of the people, both your family, the community in Indianapolis and Indiana as a whole, and also the country, given that you were in the military. In fact, your website, I thought it was really interesting. You were mentioning being a father, a veteran, a Christian, a businessman, and a pilot trainer. You said, I'm not a politician. I think a lot of politicians usually are after power, after fame, after money, and so on. And how do you plan to go into Congress while being a Christian, a family man, a businessman, abiding by your core values, while impacting the community in the way that you envision?
Yeah, well, let me start off by saying I don't plan to be a career politician. I've had a career in business. I have a specific mission and goal. I know I'm not of the opinion I can go and change everything about Washington. I want to change one thing, and that's securing our borders. So I'm very focused and mission driven on securing our borders so that our people can be secure and safe again. Our communities can be secure and safe again. And we stop losing people to these deadly drugs. So I have a very clear focus on what I want to go there and do. I recently attended the National Prayer Breakfast, and that was an eye-opening experience for me as well. I saw a whole different dynamic there in DC. You know, on the news, you know, the typical news outlets, they just kind of give us the view of all the fighting and the fussing that's going on in Washington, D.C. It was a different experience at the National Prayer Breakfast. These were Christians from both sides of the aisle that had come together for the joint purpose of praying for our country. So I believe there are like-minded people of faith where we can find common ground to make a difference. And those are the people I will seek out. That's what recovery taught me too, is community and getting with the right people, the winners, is a good thing. So I'll seek out those people in DC who are like-minded. I know they're there. I've heard and followed some of them, and I think that we can make a difference as a team.
You mentioned with the border being your main core problem that you want to help solve. What specifically with the border issue? I know you mentioned drugs coming in, but then what do you think can be done, and what ultimately what opened your eyes to seeing, hey, this is a massive problem that needs to be solved?
Yeah. What opened my eyes again was being in the rooms of recovery and helping others and families, and then witnessing people die from some of the drugs. Fentanyl is a killer. When I was a young man, if you go drink a beer with some friends, maybe drank one beer too many, next day you wake up, you have a hangover, you sleep it off. No big deal. Today, kids go to a party, they do what foolish young people do. They get the wrong drug, and they're dead. The consequence is deadly today. So, and I've had friends die, and children of friends die. So that, and it's not getting any better. The rooms are still filling up. People are still dying. We lose over 100,000 Americans a year to overdoses, and that we need to change that. So what do I want to do specifically, and what can I do from Congress, the position in Congress? One is we can bring leverage. We can use the leverage of our trade agreements to get countries like China and Mexico to put pressure on the manufacturers and distributors. And if they don't do that, it's going to cost. It's going to cost them dearly. We can put that pain in place at the trade level. Next, we can continue to build the wall. HR 2, which is the House bill, to continue for border security, includes provisions to continue to build about 200 miles of southern border wall a year. I support that. It also brings additional dollars in to increase the number of agents, border agents on the southern border from about, I think there's about 2,200 to 22,000. So we'll beef up our presence on the southern border. Then those who come over, instead of making them peanut butter sandwiches and putting them on a bus and shipping them somewhere or paying for their flights to ship them somewhere, we detain them and we return them. We don't detain them, let them loose and give them a court date 10 years from now. That's just nuts.
Yeah.
Then, now I am pro-immigration. So I don't want to eliminate all immigration, but we do need to have a system that sets people up on both sides for success. About a couple of months ago, I was in Fort Wayne getting ready to go to a restaurant. This young kid rides up on a bicycle. He's obviously of South American descent, has his cell phone and his Google Translator typed out, "Do you know where I can get a job? I just got here 2 weeks ago." And I didn't. I said, "Well, have you checked with this restaurant? Do they need a dishwasher?" He types in, "Do they need papers?" I said, "I don't know. Probably, if they want to be legal about it." So we had to send him away, So here's this young kid coming across, and I don't blame him, wanting a job, wanting a better life, but now he is not set up for success. And he's gonna run around our country trying to find work, and then some employer will probably hire him and take advantage of him and not pay him a fair wage or exploit him.
Yeah. I actually had, being someone who's not of, traditionally American descent, I was born here. My dad is a first generation immigrant from Egypt. And the first few years he was here, he worked for free as a waiter. And so he worked just on tips. They're like, we can't pay you, which legally they can't. But, it was also somewhat unethical. And then also my grandpa actually was from Mexico, and he was deported when I was about 2 years old. So unfortunately I was never able to develop a relationship with him. But, I can't really speak too much on that because, like I said, I never really knew him too well.
Yeah.
But so the issue of surging crime in America is a significant concern. I think your website mentioned it. I know we're securing the U.S. border. We spoke about building the wall, but overall, how do you intend to secure the U.S. border with the wall, but also combat drug cartels and support law enforcement to make communities safer?
Right. So law and order has been a long time value of the Republican Party and platform, and me as well. I think there needs to be very tough consequences for dealers. Users are different category. Yeah. But dealers, these guys are a different league altogether, and we need to prosecute. And there's legislation for federal mandated sentencing, that if you sell a certain amount of fentanyl, you're going away. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. So we need to stiffen the penalties and put these people away and lock them up. They are aiding and abetting in the destruction of our people. So I'm very committed to supporting tougher crimes. Now, for local law enforcement, Congress has the ability through grants to supplement and enhance local law enforcement. It's going on in this district. I've had a chance to talk to a few law enforcement people, and drugs and now violent crime with drugs is beginning to go on. They've told me that in the past, you may just have the drug issue and somebody using, maybe marijuana or selling a little marijuana, but now you're starting to see a combination of drug dealing with weapons, and violent crime is now increasing in this district and across the country. the type of criminals that are coming across are more vicious. You're seeing the gangs now start to come across the country from South America, and they're vicious. And, we're going to have to deal with that. We're going to get tough on that, crack down on them, lock them up, whatever. But that problem's getting worse.
What do you think that would look like, putting a plan of action into place? How long would it take to shift the legal system to where they are, taken more seriously? And I do agree that those who are users should not be seen as the same as those who are dealers.
Manufacturing, dealing, distributing, preying on people.
I think in some cases, I feel like the first time you're doing it can be different than the second time. The first time it might just be, hey, I am broke, I need to, pay for my mom's medical bills, and I have no idea how to make $20,000 in 2 weeks, and this is the only way I know. It's just ignorance. But I feel like once you've been in jail or prison and I think they should still go away, for a few years, teach them a lesson. But then if you do it again, then it's not a few years, it's like, same as like murder. Because you could also be potential. That's essentially in trying to murder someone is what that end result can oftentimes be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's the consequences of a deadly dose of fentanyl, is death. Yeah, it's killing people.
Yeah.
And we've got to, it's not like the old days of, people selling marijuana.
Yeah.
And worst that happens is, they got high, got munchies, or, but they weren't dying from it.
Right.
Now, this is a different game. People are dying. And now there's another drug that's even more powerful than fentanyl starting to hit the streets. I don't recall the name of it, but supposedly it's multiple times even more powerful than fentanyl. So the game continues to get more and more deadly. And we've got to come back and send a strong message that you come here and deal this stuff, you're going to pay a heavy, heavy price.
So, Lonnie, you're a strong advocate for family values. Having children who are entering their adulthood, becoming the men and people in this world that they are becoming, I don't know about you, but it seems like it wouldn't be hard to be scared in a world like this. Can you delve into your commitment to pro-life legislation, first of all, but also how you're planning to preserve education integrity for, probably not for them right now, but their children, and protecting parental rights. That's another thing that was mentioned in your campaign. And then how, as a father, how can you protect your children in this day and age when they're on their own, independent?
So first, with the pro-life issue, I am pro-life. I've been pro-life since I can remember, even as a young man. My mom was a single mom. She was 18 when she had me, was not married. And so I kind of happy that she chose life, and so I do believe life begins at conception, and I'm pro-life, and that's just a core value of mine. And I'm glad now that the pro-life issue has come back to the states. That's what we as Republicans have been arguing for years, is that it's a states' rights issue. And Supreme Court finally agreed and gave back the states the power to decide what laws to implement. As far as education, I want our schools to get back to teaching children how to think, not what to think. And so critical thinking has fallen by the wayside. And our schools and our universities have become more of an indoctrination place. And then parents are being disincentivized and even intimidated from participating and being the eyes over the shoulder of what the schools are teaching and advocating for. So we've almost made an adversarial relationship between parents and the school systems that their kids are in. That's got to change. You know, parents have every right. They are the primary caregivers and primarily responsible for the education and development of their children, not the state, not the schools. Children don't belong to the schools or to the state. They belong to the parents and the family, and that's where those family values are caught and modeled over time. And you know, I don't want schools interfering with that. Then protecting my kids today. My kids are grown. So my oldest is 30, my next is 28, and my youngest is 25. So they've already kind of gone through the system. Fortunately, we had good schools here in Carmel, and the recent DEI, and CRT teachings, critical race theory, were not present at that time. I don't think it's a good thing to be teaching children to kind of view each other on racial grounds. You know, that one race is oppressing another race. Yeah. Kids come into school, they don't see color. They tend to judge people on their character just naturally. Yeah. Which was Martin Luther King's dream. Yeah. That we would judge people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Yeah. All of a sudden, we're getting back to, you know, trying to create divisions based on color. Not good. School choice, vouchers, allowing parents to take their children out of a school system that's failing and put them in a school system of their choice that's giving a good outcome. That will help, I think, keep that tendency for lowered expectations and some of the other nonsense in check if parents have the ability to move their kids and not participate in that. Yeah. So I would definitely support and guard parents' rights. Those are just a few of the ideas.
From your perspective, what do you envision as being the tangible outcomes of if the education system stays the way it is today for the next 5, 10, 50 years?
We will continue to struggle to compete in the world. You need people with engineering degrees who can, the world is becoming more dependent on technology. You need people who can be critical thinkers, creative thinkers, and if we don't keep the standards of education high, we're just gonna produce people who are not gonna be able to compete in the world economy. And we as a country then will fall behind to countries that do, like China.
Right. When I think of compete, I think of military a lot of times, and as a veteran, you prioritize a strong military. How do you plan to maintain a robust military, eliminate wasteful spending, and support our veterans?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. Wasteful spending, last I heard they tried to audit the Pentagon, and there's trillions missing that they can't account for. I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe it takes power of the purse. All right, if you can't account for it, we're not going to spend it. Or we get some people in there, we change leadership, and people who will be accountable for the spending that's going on. But we do need a strong military. And from the reports I've read, we're at an 80-year low in terms of military preparedness. And we're being stretched already in the world. And, that leaves us vulnerable here at home as well. So I'm pro-military. I want a strong military. And I'm also not happy with the DEI that's going on in the military. I just read that West Point changed their mission from duty honor country to something else that has just made me just really flinch when I heard it. It's kind of like education and something else, but they removed that duty honor country from their mission statement. So there's just some stuff going on in our military that makes me uncomfortable. Probably also driving down the numbers in recruitment and retainment from when you're seeing the critical race theory and DEI creeping into the leadership of the military.
I've heard you mention in your candidacy free speech becoming an issue, democracy becoming an issue. How do you plan to preserve democracy and stop judicial abuse and defend freedom of speech? That's supposed to be one of our human rights here in America. That's why people come to America. But you've mentioned it not being so much today.
Well, so judicial appointments, it matters who we put on the bench. Now, the House isn't as involved in that as the U.S. Senate, and but we need to have conservative, constitutionalist judges on the bench, originalists, they call them. In other words, they're not going to go in and create legislation from the Constitution. They're going to apply the law that's already in the Constitution. So I would, support whatever I can from the House to make sure that we're putting good people on the bench. But yeah, speech has been chilled in our country. We all kind of like check ourselves these days around, is it politically correct, incorrect? Am I going to be attacked? Am I going to be, what's the term when they cut you off?
Cancel
culture, right?
Yeah.
That's chilling. I'm not trying to be intentionally offensive, but I have found that it has impacted me, and I'm really a little more careful about what I say, who I say it with, and I don't know that that's good for our country.
And I think there's some things that inherently just go directly against your perspective as a Christian man, especially.
Yes, I have a Christian worldview, and I think the Bible is God's word, and it's got some great instruction for living and guidelines, and tells us how to do life and make life work well for us.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite things I've heard from you today is that oftentimes on the news we see this conflict from Democrats and Republicans, but you're fine with Democrats. You're genuinely trying to do what is best for the world, and if a Democrat can do that, then so be it. Great.
Right.
So while discussing these issues, with that said, it's important to consider the opposing viewpoints. How do you respond to the critics who may have differing perspectives on these matters, both from a political standpoint, but also again from a spiritual standpoint?
Well, first of all, I respect people, respect their right to have a different opinion, different background, come from different cultures. And I know just from my work in business and life that those different perspectives can be valuable. So, and I assume that everybody, I didn't assume positive intent, right? I assume you love the country, Democrats love our country, I love our country. They want our country to do well, I want our country to do. So the what is our common ground. We both love our country. How we do that now is where we kind of get into the debate. And that's why we have a democracy, and the marketplace of ideas. And let's get into the marketplace ideas and let's, work this out. We also have 50 states, which were like 50 laboratories where you can, we have liberal states, we have conservative states. Let's see how these ideas play out in these different states. Who gets the best outcomes and which ideas are actually working. And then we can adopt those across other states. So, that free speech, the marketplace of ideas, respecting each other's perspective, but assuming positive intent, and then trying to reach across and have honest debate and gain understanding from each side and then maybe from there we can kind of craft some ways to move our country forward that both sides can live with. We're not probably each going to get 100% of what we want, but maybe we both get enough of what we want to move forward.
Before we can conclude, what are the key actions or changes you hope to bring as a congressman that can positively impact the lives of your constitutions and all Americans? If you could give us maybe the one thing, I know that's, securing the border, but what would that look like in action?
Yeah, so passing a border security bill is goal number one, securing our borders. And then getting the bad guys who are here, who've come across, identifying, finding them, and getting them out of here. That's the immediate thing. I want to be able to feel safe when I walk out on the street. I want my kids to feel safe, my friends, and there's a bit of concern now. People are a little worried about what's going on and who's coming into our country. So I think without security in a secure country, all the other issues, become almost secondary. It's still important, but secondary. We got to be safe, and we got to have a secure country. No borders, no country. And this is America. We have a unique culture, and it's worth protecting. And I want to protect it, and I want to give a country, hand down a country to my kids and my grandchildren that is safe and secure and has preserved the American dream, and where they can go to and build a life and have a happy life.
So one last thing before we wrap up. I have a few quick personal insightful questions for you, just rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So starting off with, what is your favorite book that has influenced your political beliefs?
Favorite book? Maybe de Tocqueville's Travels, where it's a story of him traveling across the country and kind of seeing how the market works and how people live and operate and negotiate and build lives and wealth in the country. And it's very much on the free market dynamics that are going on in the United States, which have set us apart from a lot of other countries.
What is one word that describes your leadership style?
Collaborative.
A piece of advice for aspiring politicians.
Get involved in your local party. Get involved with a local candidate you like and experience the process.
Right. Your vision for the American dream in one sentence.
Safe, secure, with opportunity, economic opportunity for all.
So that wraps up our insightful conversation with Lonnie L.D. Powell. Lonnie, thank you for sharing your perspectives and aspirations with our audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony.
To our listeners, if you found this episode thought-provoking, get involved by supporting Lonnie's campaign and making your voice heard in Washington. If you enjoyed the episode, I always recommend sharing with someone who can also take value. You never know the impact you can have on someone's life, and I always like to say, your network is your net worth. So why not be a valuable part of someone else's network? Share this episode if you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching.
Thank you. All right.